Thank you very much for coming to the event Open Science Publication Strategy. So, respectable the Vice Rector for Student Affairs and Development, Professor Jenny Lukito Setiawan, MA, PhD, and Honorable Mr. Ben Clark, MA, RSE, Managing Director, Taylor and Francis, Asia Pacific. Honorable Liz Allen, Director of Strategic Initiative, F1000. Honorable for Mrs. Victoria Bebit, Director Research Development and Objects. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, step on the following agenda is introduction to Taylor and Francis, introduction to F1000, top tips for generating publicity, and open science strategy. So the first is welcoming speech from Professor Jenny Lukito Setiawan, MA, PhD. Prof. Jenny, time is yours. Please give applause for Prof. Jenny.
Okay, good morning everybody. Very happy to meet you all and very warm welcome to Mr. Barry Clark and also Liz Allen. And Victoria Babbitt, welcome. And also welcome to friends and colleagues from many universities in Indonesia, and also all faculty members and also staff from Universitas Ciputra. Today, we have the first workshop on open science publication strategy. The UNESCO recommendation on open science was adopted by the General Conference of UNESCO at its 41st session on 23rd November 2021. The recommendation affirms the importance of open science as a vital tool to improve the quality and accessibility of both scientific outputs and scientific process to bridge the science, technology, and innovation gaps between and within countries and to fulfill the human right of access to science. On 28 April 2022, the implementation strategy was shared with UNESCO member states and the Open Science Partnership during an online information meeting on implementation of the UNESCO recommendation. With the adoption of this recommendation, member states have embraced the culture and practice of open science and agreed to report back every 4 years on their progress. They have also expressed their desire to keep the process of implementation of the recommendation as inclusive, transparent, and consultative as the process leading to its development. The UNESCO has established key pillars of open science. The first, open scientific knowledge, open science infrastructure, open engagement of societal actors, and also open dialogue with other knowledge systems. So it is very important for us as an academic community in Indonesia to foster a culture of open science through training, education, digital literacy, and capacity building to enable researchers and other stakeholders to participate in open science with the purpose to reach people beyond the scientific community. Universitas Ciputra is very proud to be one of the leading key players on open science in Indonesia as one of our lecturers, Dr. Tatas Broto Sudarmo, has been appointed as 41000 brand ambassador. The ambassador program provides information about how F1000 is working with research community internationally to progress the opportunities of open research and tackle challenges to open research adoption. So, why do we academics and the scientific community need to support open science? What is it actually? And how do we contribute to making scientific process more inclusive and accessible to the broader inquiring society? So without further ado, let us learn from this workshop how Taylor and Francis, especially the model developed by F1000 publication, promote open science and reaching people beyond the scientific community internationally. So please give applause to Perry, Clark, Liz Allen, and Victoria David. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy the workshop.
Thank you, Prof. Jenny. Okay, we will watch the video UNESCO recommendation on open science.
To address the complex challenges of the 21st century, we need better science. To address the complex challenges of the 21st century, we need better science. To address the complex challenges of the 21st century, we need better science. We need a more transparent, accessible, and inclusive science, which builds on collaboration. We need science that is beneficial for all people in every corner of the world. In other words, we need open science. But how does open science work? With open science, scientists and engineers use open licenses to share their publications, data, educational materials, software, and even hardware more widely. They can share research infrastructure too, and make data, archives, and research equipment more accessible. Through open science, innovators, students, and other community members can collaborate with scientists on research, ranging from biology to astronomy, to bridge the gap between society and science. By opening traditional science to other knowledge systems, science can be enriched by exchanges with indigenous and marginalized groups for the benefit of all. Just imagine what we can achieve with open science. By openly sharing data, we can develop treatments and vaccines faster, as we did for COVID-19. With greater international collaboration, we can deal with biodiversity loss and climate change more effectively. Open science will help to improve the quality of research while also broadening its social impact. Yet today, the benefits of science idea that could revolutionize agriculture or renewable energy, but your university cannot afford to pay for the data you need to realize your project. We have to change the way science works so everyone can contribute to and benefit from it. The good news is that scientists and non-scientists from all over the world are stepping up to ensure a just transition to open science. Many have joined UNESCO in developing the first international recommendation on open science. Reflecting the views of a growing and vibrant global community, the UNESCO recommendation sets global standards for making open science a reality that leaves no one behind. Now it's your turn to support the movement and make sure that science is accessible to all with benefits for all.
Okay. Next, we will hearing Strawberry Crab in AFLC Managing Director Taylor and Francis Asia Pacific. Please give applause. Thank you very much.
Good. Can you hear me with that microphone? Can you hear me?
It's okay.
It's okay. Thank you. Okay. So thank you very much for hosting us. It's a delight to be back in Surabaya. I've got a slide now. I'll introduce my colleagues a little bit more and about myself a little bit. I just want to say thank you so much to Ciputra University. And thank you so much for many of you have come from not just from Melalui, but from Surabaya. Thank you so much. Thank you. And because I'm not controlling the slides, I'll have to say click. I just realised I'm standing in front of this slide, which is so what I'll do is it's a different slide deck, so it's can I sit? I can stand up there. Yes. Didn't realise that. Let's go over again. Can we put that on the stage? That's all right. I'm just moving it. So if you click through to the next slide, thank you. So we've already been introduced. I won't spend a lot of time introducing all of us, and I'll let Liz and Victoria introduce themselves in more detail. But I'm Barry Clark, Managing Director for Asia Pacific. I live in Singapore and have lived in Singapore for 13 years, actually. For 31 years. And I first visited Surabaya about 28 years ago. So I'm a frequent visitor to Surabaya. This is one of my favourite parts of Southeast Asia. Mount Bromo, Melalui, both of which I've tried to climb in my younger days. I'm blessed with some of the best landscapes on the planet, I think, in this part of Surabaya. So if you click through to thank you, first slide, Taylor and Francis, you know I think a little bit about Taylor and Francis, we're an old publisher, founded in 1778, is that necessary? Okay, thank you, Tatus. Founded in 1778, but recently we have a new mission articulated to foster human progress through knowledge. And we can do that in many ways. We've been doing that in many ways for a couple of centuries. And if you click first to the imprints that some of you are familiar with, Taylor and Francis itself, Routledge and CRC Press, these imprints are very established in the traditional publishing world. Books and journals, some of which have been published for a couple of hundred years with some of the great names in science and social science. More recently, and if you click, we have developed services for the open science, open research ecosystem. So F1000, which Liz will talk about in much more detail later, but other services that we provide through Cogent and Dove Press, which is a specialised medical on open access publisher. So we've got the full range, not only of services, traditional publishing, books and journals, but also now platforms that offer open research outlets for your research. And we also cover all subjects. Literally all disciplines are published in our portfolio of imprints. And if you click through to the next slide, I just thought I'd just say a few words about our books publishing program. Most of our presentation is around articles and current research, but we still think books play a very important role in the ecosystem. So some of you know Routledge, some of you know CRC Press. I just thought I would highlight the books that we publish, textbooks and research monographs we're probably most famous for, but we also publish smaller monographs called Focus, which are just maybe 40, 50,000 words, so maybe less than 100 pages, 80 pages, so we can publish smaller books. We publish edited collections, often based on conferences or meetings, and we have a vast number of handbooks, definitive, authoritative handbooks covering virtually every topic, and some in popular reference. And of course, everything is now digital. So not only is it digital, but we've now got open access books options, so where you can fund the book publishing with us and it will become open access the moment it is published. So we've adapted our traditional models for the new open science, open research ecosystem. But I think most of our talk now is going to be talking about journals, and I thought I'd just highlight how big a journal publisher we are. We have something like 2,500 journals, some of which have been published literally for over 200 years. We work with societies and associations across the world, and we're number one in terms of quality in many, many subjects, especially in social sciences and humanities, and we are indeed the biggest publisher in social sciences and humanities. And more recently, we've developed, as I mentioned, open access, open science platforms, so that, as just been articulated with the UNESCO video, that all science can be available to anyone, anywhere. It's a movement to make scientific research data and the dissemination available to any member of society. F1000, which Liz will talk about in a few moments, provides open research with a very innovative publishing model. But because of this open science momentum, open research momentum, we know you have to be very careful and beware of predatory publishers. Could you click, please? And again, I have a slide which articulates why it is so important to be very wary of where you publish. Predatory journals pose a serious threat both to researchers publishing the results of their work and to the peer-reviewed medical literature or other literature itself. The publications differ from legitimate open access journals, like the ones that we publish, in that predatory journals subvert peer review publishing for the sole purpose of financial gain, with very little concern for ethical behaviour. So, if you click again, we have the publishers within the ecosystem. All the big publishers have got together to create awareness, to help researchers think, check, and then submit your papers to only publishers that are legitimate. So please avoid predatory publishers. And if we click through a couple more times, please do check that the journal that you're publishing with is part of this community of verified, authenticated, open research publishers. So please take note of that. Think, check, and submit. Thank you. The next slide begins to highlight some of the tools in your open research journey, because you're all on a journey, whether you're a fresh graduate entering maybe into a PhD program, or a postdoc, or a professor and a specialist in your subject, you're on a journey. We have many tools to help you on that publishing journey, and increasingly these tools are very suitable for the open research ecosystem. I won't go into details with any of these, but I wanted to highlight them. All the slides will be circulated. You will have access to all of this, And if you need any further help in any of the processes, please do reach out. I would strongly recommend reaching out first to your colleagues and your library, because that's your first area of expertise, close at hand, but please do reach out to us. If I don't know the answer to your question, I know who will know the answer to your question. So we do have tools for both pre-submission, so to help you decide which journal to select for your article. We have language and translation services, and there's a website there which you can take a note of, or again, we will circulate these slides to help you polishing your English. We have peer networking support through various ways. PeerWith provides a peer-to-peer marketplace, enabling you to find academics working in your expertise. Of course, there are many marketing and promotion services, Kudos, Publicize, Impact Story. All of these services can help you with the marketing of your research, with the marketing, the support, the promotion of your research, and collaborative writing tools. Of course, most people use Microsoft, but there are other more specialized collaborative writing tools which you should be aware of. And I think the next slide gives a couple more on your tools to help you on your journey. Social media. Everyone uses social media. My own daughters think I should have a TikTok account. I'm not so sure. But LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, perhaps not Twitter, but YouTube, all these social media channels are legitimately good ways of creating more awareness about your research. And the services for the industry, for librarians, for publishers, to help analyze and get good data about what's happening, all of that has been revolutionized in recent years. So we really are working hard. Why? To ensure that your research has maximum impact, which is really why we're in publishing in the first place. I think the next slide begins to highlight newer tools that we're developing, and this is under a framework that we call open thinking. So F1000 has created open thinking as a place, as a program where open research communities can come together to discuss the opportunities to seize, as well as challenge to overcome, as well as the challenges that need to be overcome to truly embrace open research. So the point is, open research is a good idea, but there are many challenges and barriers to getting there. So there's a community now, open thinking, to help share thoughts about this process that most researchers in science, technology, and in social sciences are now on. And so recently, we've got an ambassador program, and I'm very delighted to say that Tatas is the very first ambassador for open research, F1000, anywhere in the world. He was the first to think that this idea of promoting open research was something that he would like to help with. So this is an example of him helping us get the message across, and we will be doing more such webinars, going into more depth over the next year to explain the benefits, but also to share the challenges of getting your research in the open ecosystem. I'm very grateful to Tatas for coming forward. And he's already posted on our website a post within days of agreeing. I wish all our authors could be as productive and as quick as Tatas, but his blog is there, Open Research Management for Biodiversity and Climate Science in Indonesia. A critically important area. Thank you again for your support. And I think finally, almost, the next slide, actually we move on to Liz already. So thank you very much for your attention. What Liz will do now, excuse me, is explain a little bit more about the F1000 model. And I'll allow Liz to introduce herself a little bit more, if I may, Liz. She's the Director of Strategic Partnerships for F1000, making her very first visit to Indonesia, as is Victoria Baggett, who's the Director of Research Development Outreach. So Liz, over to you.
Tatters for being our first ambassador. Yeah, it is my first visit here. I'm based in the UK and I'm really excited to be here. Barry, you're taking some slides, but can I use that?
Yes. Use more slides.
So I'm going to stand here then so I can keep an eye on notes. Yes, thank you everybody so much, and also thank you to the Vice Rector for the lovely introduction. And the UNESCO Declaration on Open Science really does anchor what we do at F1000, particularly as a publisher and working as part of the Taylor and Francis group. Open knowledge is really something that publishers can really do something about, that UNESCO focus on open knowledge. And it's something that we've been really trying to do from the start. So I'm going to give you a lot more detail on F1000 in terms of what it is, what we do as a publisher to support open knowledge as part of open science, but also how you can publish with us. To give you some practical information, there is quite a lot of interest across Indonesia in publishing with F1000. We have seen an increase in authors wanting to publish with us using our open science methodologies and process, so I can show you some examples as well, and how to do that. And then going forward, we'll share these slides, you will have all the links, and then we can obviously have Tatus can provide any expert guidance, but we will leave all the contact details as well. Sorry. So just to give a bit of background, the key thing here is there's lots of different ways in that researchers are now sharing their work. So as a publisher, we wanted to kind of get ahead of that and work with the community in making research more available, more quickly, and more usable to all the audiences of research. I think the key statement is in the middle here. As a publisher, we know that how we share, discover, and talk about research is changing. And we wanted to be a publisher that's really embracing those methodologies and making it easy for researchers to publish and share their work. So I'm going to take you through the actual publishing model. So we have on the left side here, we have a number of publishing titles. We call them publishing platforms, but they behave like journals. They're effectively journals. We use the word platform almost to kind of take us to a new way of working, but essentially it's a journal with its own ISSN. We are indexed in the same way other journals are published and indexed, so it counts, it's accredited, we use peer review, proper quality assured peer review. We are not a predatory publisher, we are an open access publisher, but we do a lot more than that in the process, which is all about open research. Just for information, F1000 Research, which is our main title, it's a multidisciplinary, started out with, there's a very life science medicine focus, and it's quite life sciences, STM focus, but you can publish in any discipline. So it's a mega journal. F1000 Research is our first journal. It's in the Scopus quartile ones for a number of the medical areas and life sciences, so pharmacology, biochemistry, medicine, and it's in Q2 for immunology, and we're in a few of the other lower ones too for a number of the disciplines, obviously aiming to get higher, but yeah, it's really important to us to make sure that this content is as citable and usable as possible, and that's what we try to do. As I mentioned, we have a number of titles. We started out with just the one F1000 Research, so that's our top journal, that's our multidisciplinary, across-the-board mega journal. We've now launched some community titles, so working in partnership with Taylor and Francis, we've now launched a number of community titles, and what I mean by that is subject areas. All our titles are intended to be broad-based, multidisciplinary. So we have one in materials science, we have one at the bottom in molecular psychology, we're about to launch one in bioethics, and I know that that's a focus here at the university. We also have a broad-based one in health, we're about to launch at the end of this year, and they're all using the same open research publishing model that I'm going to explain to you in a moment. And then we also work with a number of organisations. I'm not really going to go into this in much detail today, But like university presses or societies work with publishers to set up journals, we also do that for others. So using our technology and our publishing model, we also provide services to other organisations. So we have a partnership with the European Commission, and they have their own publishing platform using the open research methodology process. We have one with the Wellcome Trust, who are a big UK medical funder. We also have a partnership with a society that provides medical education. They have a journal called Medical Teacher, which is a more traditional journal, and they also wanted to do something much more open research, future-facing. So they also now have a title which uses our open research publishing process called NedEd Publish. And the bottom one here is an example, bottom left, right, is a partnership we have with a university in Poland who wanted, again, to take a journal that they've been running for quite a while. From there, they wanted us to run it using an open research methodology. So we get much more interest from different organisations who want to take more traditional ways of publishing to a more open, inclusive, future-facing methodology. So hopefully this is going to help explain what we do. So we use this publishing model, and we're constantly looking at what's going on out there in the market. We're looking at what researchers want to do to adapt this, but this is the model at the moment. So an author will come to us, they will submit an article to us. Internally we have a whole range of staff who are in-house editors, and we do a series of checks on the article before we decide whether we're going to take it any further. So we do a plagiarism check, we check for any ethical approvals, we check that the author has scholarly credentials and is affiliated with an institution. There's a whole load of other things we check for. We do a series of checks first before we take that article forward. Some publishers do that further down the line. We do it right up front because of the model that I'll show you the rest of in a moment. If an article passes those initial checks, we then check that it has any underpinning data and software and any materials or resources that are being described in that research. We make sure that they are also available so that anyone reading that article can actually get hold of the pieces that are being described in that article to use it. And that goes back to the whole open knowledge aim. And again, as the UNESCO video showed, it's all about making the research that we publish as usable and open and as accessible for the benefits of everybody who wants to read and use that work. Open access is a major step forward in providing visibility and ability to read an article, but what we're trying to do is make that work usable so you can grab all the pieces that are being described in that research and use them for your benefit and for the benefit of the people who want to build on that work and use it in policy, practice, whatever. So data is very important, and data is very broad. I'm talking about data in a very broad way. It can be code, it can be interviews, it could be gene samples, it could be all kinds of things. Data is very broad, but we work under principles that work, if it's important to the article, it needs to be accessible. So we work with a number of repositories and places where people can host their data, and we make sure that there are long-term open links to any materials and research and resources being described in that work. If those checks are passed, so if you've passed all our checks and you've made your data available, if there are no data, if there's sensitive data that needs to be protected, of course we will do that. We have data availability statements where you have to describe that. There are, things that we're a publisher with integrity. If things don't need to be shared or can't be shared, we will not force it. But if they should be shared, they will be. If you pass all those things, we will then publish it before peer review, and that's the key thing here. We will publish before peer review. The article will be issued with a DOI. It will be citable at that point and published on the journal, in the journal, all digital, all online. There's a little bit more, I'll leave this with you, but what we really work with is a fair data policy. Quite a few of you. How many people have heard of fair data? Okay, that's really interesting. It's something that we use. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And it's one of the principles that's being used across the world to support movements to share data. So that's what we try to do. So it's got to be findable. So things like DOIs, identifiers on the research is absolutely key. Accessible means it needs an open license, an open permissive license. Interoperable means this is one of the more challenging things, and again in the UNESCO video we talked about open infrastructures. It's really hard to connect different pieces of research together still. I don't think we're there. Most people aren't there with having data here that links to data there that's written here. And we're not there yet, but that's the aim. And reproducible means that there's enough information there to allow you to use that data. And sometimes that's not there either. We know that there's a lot of work to be done here. But that's what we try to do. We try to operate a fair data policy as much as possible. And the reason why this is important, there's a lot of waste in the system. There's a lot of people producing data and then don't share it, and then other people produce the same data or don't realise they could have used somebody else's data, and there's a lot of waste in our system collectively. So trying to make and share your data is just as important as sharing the research descriptions. So we're really trying to facilitate that as a publisher. And there's also a lot of evidence that actually if you share your data, it means your work gets cited more, because people like your piece of work because not only can they read what you say, they can use it. And it's coming through now in lots of the bibliographic databases and the indexes that you can see that citations are really starting to be driven by open access and open sharing. So it's really important that you make your work as usable and as accessible as possible. Get it out there and promote it, of course, but actually that's a really useful way to look at it, and we're seeing that now. So, just to move on, then we've published. So you're published on our site, but you haven't been peer-reviewed. And most people want to be peer-reviewed, of course. That's the quality assurance that a publisher provides. That distinguishes us from predatory publishing. Peer review remains absolutely key. We use open peer review. And this is one of the things, again, it's being promoted in lots of open declarations. So it's really important that we do transparent peer review. There's no bias. We're trying to minimise biases in the system. When we say open peer review, we don't just publish it and let anybody comment. It's not crowdsourced peer review. It's invited peer review. We are a publisher. We will invite experts to review your work. But we will publish the names, we will publish the reviews alongside the article. So it's all there for everyone to see. We do moderate the peer review comments. If anyone here, how many people have peer reviewed before? Yes, quite a few of you provided peer review. Sometimes you get peer review reports back and they're not so nice, or they're not as constructive as they could be, or there are problems in what they say. Open peer reviews kind of moderates that somewhat. Obviously we want real constructive criticism, but when you're publishing in the open, we tend to see that the reviews are very tight and they're very constructive. So yeah, the system isn't perfect, whether you do closed peer review, double blind, half blind, single blind, or open. We know that there's lots of different models, but in our model, we like transparency, so we're promoting transparency. The other thing in the model is the peer review comments are published, and you can actually get a DOI for the peer review itself. So if you want to get credit and visibility for your peer review, it's all there in the open with its own unique DOI. And we also work with ORCID to make sure that authors get full ORCIDs and the reviewers get ORCID IDs. So if you review for us, if you publish with us, we push straight through all the infrastructure systems, through to Crossref, through to your ORCID profile. How many people here have ORCID IDs? Okay, that's a really good thing that's been really building up, helping to connect every piece together. But that's a really interesting thing as well. So the reviews are published. Sorry, thank you. The comments are published. The authors then review their article if they need to. Sometimes they don't need to. And once we have an agreement with the reviewers, once the articles are considered sound science to pass peer review, it's considered pass peer review, and then Just like every publisher, we will send it to the indexes like Scopus, DOAJ, PubMed, wherever else. We're indexing lots of places. We will then send it to the indexers, and then it's suddenly much more discoverable. So kind of in summary, we get work out there quickly. We don't delay publication of the work. If you want to share that work, if you don't want to be scooped, you get it out there early. It's still yours, even though it hasn't passed peer review. Once it's passed peer review, it's got that stamp of approval, stamp of mark, a quality mark that a publisher provides, and it's then indexed model. Okay? So it's a visible, it's kind of like a preprint in the early stages. As soon as it's been peer reviewed, it's indexed. So what we've done in a way is taken the hood, all of this first two sections, we've taken the hood off the publishing process and just put it all out there in the open. And we've kept it all in one contained system, but you still get your article through to indexers. The process generally is quicker. We still have the challenge of getting people to peer review for us, like most publishers. That's a major, major challenge. But in our model, we've at least not held up the article while we peer review. It's out there. And we also don't have the authors having to jump between different journals to find somewhere to accept it. So that's the model in a nutshell. So just the other thing that we do as a publisher, again, it goes back to open knowledge and all the range of things you can do to share your work and encourage engagement and dialogue in the work that you do. These are just some examples. We have over 30 different types of research article you can publish with us, all peer-reviewed, all with a DOI, all go through that process. We tailor the peer review questions that we ask according to article options, of course, but yeah, they all go through this process. What we're trying to do is in summary in the title, again, as part of open knowledge, not only are we trying to make sure that the ability to get your work out there, get people using it as quickly as possible, we're also trying to support researchers across all parts of the research life cycle. If you want to share your methods, and they're a good enough piece of work for others to share in their own right, why do you need to put them in a huge research article 3 years after you started? You can get your methods out there, you can get credit, you can get visibility, you can share with others for them to use your methods in detail early in the process. So we have method articles, study protocols, software articles. If you write a piece of research code about something you're doing, you can publish that in your own right, get credit for that visibility, and get others using it. That's the key thing. It's about getting the pieces of research used. Often, many of those pieces are just embedded in a research article that's published 3 to 4 years after you've started working. You can do research and publish research right throughout your life cycle. Just before I finish, I wanted to give you some data on who's publishing with us. So we are getting, this is just the last 2 years' data, and obviously this year isn't finished yet. We get a lot of stuff from Agar. You'll probably see in my data I've got 2 universities, 1 and 3 is University of Agar. They're publishing a lot of medical content. That's partly because our data system's not very great. We've got multi-coding, so they're both Agar, so they've not been aggregated. So.
Next year, University of Ciputra.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. We haven't got anything here apart from Tatus's blog. So if anyone wants to publish with us, please speak to Tatus. Please just come talk to us. The first time you publish with us, that model can be quite a challenge to work through. You need to have your data ready. But we're really happy to do a deep dive with anyone who wants to sort of work that out, just to make sure we can take you through the process properly. We'd like to see you up there, of course, but we are getting a lot of content from Indonesia, so people are embracing the open research methodologies. And just quickly, before I finish again, we also looked at the different types of articles coming from Indonesia. These are submissions, so at the moment the acceptance rate to pass those checks, those first 2 checks, this doesn't mean it will pass peer review. Most will, but this is just the first 2 checks. You have a 42% acceptance rate, again, over the last 2 years. This was in 2021, 42% acceptance rate on F1000. The most popular research articles are still the full research article, which is a traditional research article. But we also get a lot of systematic reviews from Indonesia, I think because we get a lot of medical content from medical clinical seeing a lot of systematic reviews. They've got a 76% acceptance rate. Usually because a systematic review is built by somebody who's already working with data sets, so they're likely to be very friendly with, very, very experienced in dealing with data, and that's probably why we're seeing high acceptance rates. But still, that's a really nice indication that people can cope with the model, are wanting to share these kinds of works with it. Next slide. So I just wanted to highlight that. Next one. Next one. And then in 2022, we're seeing the same pattern. This hasn't finished yet, but we've got more submissions this year already, and this year hasn't finished, than we had last year. And you can see the number of submissions. This year we've had so far nearly 500 submissions from Indonesia this year. And the acceptance rate is slightly higher, 43%. Any statisticians among you will know that that's probably not statistically significant, but it's good, it's up, that's good. Next slide. I'll move on from this, I'll share these slides. These are just some deep dives into the actual types of research articles and some examples. Methods article, just to highlight what they're really great at is early career researchers, who sometimes you get people who are methodology specialists working as part of a larger team. They don't get the visibility. They're often author 16 in a big journal title. They don't get the visibility and credit. Some of the things that we do allow those kinds of authors to really get visibility for work. So a lot of early career, mid-career researchers can get profile for work that they've done. Move on. And like any publisher, we have article-based metrics. F1000 research is in scope as it's a bona fide journal with an ISSN. We have a huge range of article-level metrics. We get good citation data. So citations, because it's open, because you're sharing your data, we're making the work as usable as possible. There's a really high potential to get cited. And I'll probably just finish on this summary. Open access. Everything we do is about open access. Getting work out there quickly, making work as usable and reusable as possible, enabling publishing of all parts of the research for all kinds of researchers, and we're really trying to build efficiencies into the system. A little bit like UNESCO again said, it's really important to get research out there, share it for the benefit of all, but there's lots of efficiencies in that system. And then there's a little tiny video, I don't know if I've gone over, shall I leave that? Shall I just do this little video? There's a video here, how to publish with F1000. Again, it's a summary video, and if you need detail, we can get Tatis, and you can obviously come and speak to me and any of the F1000 team. But yeah, if we can play that, that would be, and we'll share this with you, of course, as well. So.
Thinking of publishing your paper on one of our online publishing platforms? Before submitting your research, make sure you understand how our innovative publishing model works. First, you submit your article online using our simple form. Our in-house editorial team then carries out pre-publication checks to ensure your work meets our policies and guidelines, including any open data and ethical requirements. We look at things like the originality of your work to avoid plagiarism, whether your article is written in good English to ensure readability, and whether all data collected or created as part of your research project have been provided in an open format. After passing these initial requirements, our editorial team moves on to our remaining pre-publication checks, and then the article is accepted for publication. Before your research is published, you need to suggest 5 potential reviewers. Our editorial team is here to help you find reviewers if you need it, and they will check your proposed reviewers to ensure they are qualified and meet our criteria. Once we've approved all 5 reviewers, your article is published openly on the platform, enabling immediate reading and citation. Our editorial team then contacts your suggested reviewers, inviting them to assess your paper. Once your peer reviewers accept the invitation, open, transparent peer review takes place. Peer review reports and reviewer names are published alongside the article, and you can then respond to their comments publicly. At any stage in the process, you can publish revised versions of your work addressing reviewer feedback. All versions of an article are linked and independently citable. And there you have it, the F1000 publishing model in 4 simple steps. To find out more, visit f1000.com.
So we'll leave that with you. There's one thing on there that I mentioned at the beginning, we're adapting the model listening to feedback. The author suggested peer reviewer, it mentions 5 reviewers. We still ask authors to suggest reviewers, but we're moving away from just that.
I think we can start.
We're
Hello
moving away from
everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Improving Reproducibility through Diverse
I'll
Research.
stop and hand over to Victoria.
My name is Melissa,
So thank you
and
very
I'm
much.
working executive at Melalui, and I'm happy to provide any technical support in today's session.
I wondered if
Before
you
we start,
questions
let's go through some
while you
webinar
solve
housekeeping.
the extra YouTube video. I just wonder if there's any
First of all, all
questions
participants
about
will be
it.
muted throughout the webinar, but please do write your questions in the question.
Okay, my name is Regina, so we are coming from University, from the second university of this in F1000. So thank you for a nice explanation about F1000. Actually, I love the model of how F1000 published the article. However, there is some issues I found during the publishing time. Actually, the first question is for the graduate students, especially doctoral students. Usually, university asks to publish 2 or 3 articles for us to can obtain the degree. However, when we publish in F1000, the article is published, but it's not yet peer-reviewed. But some of the students can claim to my university that the article is published, but I don't think it is kind of fair for us, because if we publish in other journal, we need to pass several steps, including the submission, peer reviewed, and then doing experiment for the revision and final publish. But in F1000 it's quite simple. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, that's a really, we hear this comment a lot. I mean, the article, in theory, is published with us without its peer review. I think using the word published is probably a little bit problematic. As soon as it's past peer review, it is exactly published, and that can be completely included in any of your data that counts. But we are hearing from other parts of the world that the preprint movement is really taking off. So some people are really publishing as preprints, and some funding agencies count those, and some organisations count those as publications also, partly because it can take a long time to get published, and you sometimes end up through lots of different systems getting rejected, so it's actually quite tough. But yeah, I don't think we can solve that on our own, that issue on our own. Yeah, it's something we can look at, how we mark things to say that they've not passed peer review yet. On our website, it clearly states on the article that it has not passed peer review. It does say that, and we make that very, very clear. Obviously, if you just put a DOI string, you can, unless you look at the DOI, you can't see that it hasn't passed peer review, which is a challenge. But again, that's a system-wide issue. But yeah, it's a really good feedback. Yeah, and I understand how people are also keen to publish. We hope that there are other benefits as well, but hopefully it will get through peer review though.
Yeah, I hope
That's a
you
good
can,
question.
maybe, I'm not sure, but my idea is maybe F1000 can have some other terms other than publish for the peer review.
Yeah, we've heard that feedback before. It's a really good point. We are looking at refreshing the model right now, which includes, as I mentioned, the peer review model. With the actual way, we ask authors to suggest reviewers, but we're actually changing that to be much more us. We invite the peer reviews. We like suggestions. Most publishers say they ask for suggestions, don't they? On our published, they ask for suggestions for reviewers too. And we still want that because often the authors really know who should review their work. But yeah, we do check for conflicts of interest already, but still we're trying to speed it up. So yeah, that's one thing we're looking at as well.
Can I just add that obviously we do have a special relationship with the University, as you may know. So I think it's also a relatively new arrangement. It's up to also the administration, the students, faculty, to understand the model better, and then to make sure that the whole ecosystem of the university really knows the difference between what is available as preprint survey and what is really published after the peer review process. I think there's an internal messaging team in Jakarta can help with that internal messaging between Jaya and other universities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shall I ask another question? Is it okay or later? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there is some college from my.
There are some problems. We already screen for conflicts of interest. So again, like any other publisher, we won't just invite who you've suggested. We don't do that. We never did that. But yeah, there's always challenges in that whole selection process. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why we're looking at revising that. So that's really a good point as well. We do encourage early career researchers to get involved in peer review, though, because often it's the postdoc that does most of the work on a peer review. Sometimes it goes to someone senior and they get someone to ask them to help, and it's a great training thing. But yeah, we don't want any fraud in there or any issues in there. Yeah, it's a really good point. But that's another reason why you should come and talk to us. You seem to know temperature. But yeah, good, really well.
It doesn't mean I hate my college, but I love science, so I want science to be more clear from any kind of negative.
And the fact that it's transparent is that there's a spotlight on this issue.
Yeah.
So it's a good
Exactly.
thing.
We are the
Thank you.
Very good questions. We can do more afterwards, but I'll hand over to Victoria.
So next we've invited Ciputra, who's the Director of Research, Development and Outreach, to talk about some of the capacity building that we offer institutions. Victoria.
Hi everyone. So nice to be here. Nice to see all of your friendly faces, and thanks so much, Marcus, for organizing this event. As said, it's my first time in Indonesia, and I'm already so incredibly impressed. This city is so beautiful. We came in last night, and they've done such a nice job with lighting, with all the trees and everything. It was just beautiful coming into the town. So thanks for having us here. So, as said, today we can go forward a bit. Right to the blue one. Yes. Oh, I probably accidentally redid them. That should be the same one. Oh, maybe this is. Oh, there we go. Great. Yes, it's not that exciting of a slide there. So, as said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways in which we support researchers through the publishing journey and post-publication. So today, just go to the next one. I'm just going to talk about some of the capacity building. There we go. I'm going to talk about some of the capacity building work we do for researchers, and a little bit about some of the services we have around manuscript preparation and then post-research promotion that you can do. So we can go to the next one. So at Taylor and Francis, we have a couple different ways in which we're supporting researchers. So the first element is really about the research training that we do. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. But what we see and what you saw with F1000 is we do see rejection rates. In F1000, they tend to be a little bit lower just because the model is a bit different. That point of publication is slightly different. But in the journals, we do see very high rejection rates. And this is global. This doesn't necessarily relate to any one country. But we are seeing rejection rates sometimes, 80% and such. So it's a very competitive landscape, and we're really trying to make sure researchers have the absolute best understanding of the process so that they can navigate the publishing process successfully. So that's one aspect of what we do. And then the other aspect is around manuscript preparation. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. So there's two different ways that we're supporting researchers. One area is our webinar series. I'll talk a little bit more in depth in terms of the topics. But these are shorter webinars. They're open to anyone. And these webinars are designed to give basic understanding of different aspects of the publishing and post-publication process to researchers. It's an opportunity that you can ask some general questions, but we tend to shy away from really specific questions about research because they tend to be large groups from across disciplines. And then also, obviously, we always give certificates of attendance and that sort of thing because there's many researchers that want it. The other type of training that we offer is our TNF training program, and this is a much more in-depth training program. These sessions tend to be around 3 hours long. It's really doing a deep dive into the different subjects. There's an opportunity to have some coaching as well, so to ask some really specific questions about your research. And there's an opportunity to take what you're learning and apply it in real time. So for instance, with one of the courses I teach, Fundamentals of Publishing, I ask all the participants to bring a paper to the session. It could be a seminar paper that they're working on, it could be a paper they're looking to submit for peer review. And why I ask them to bring that to the session is because we'll work with it in the session in terms of writing abstracts and effective titles. So again, we try and have activities that are really actually useful to you as researchers, that you walk away, take another step in your research process. I can move on? Yeah. So the research webinar series, first one that I mentioned, this is our free webinar series. We started this year, and what I wanted to do is have an ongoing webinar series planned well in advance so people could register, they knew what was coming, and that we were doing sessions at 2 times a day, so that researchers from all over the world could participate in these sessions without having to wake up at 5 a.m. And the sessions cover any number of topics. Some are very broad topics, some are very specific topics. And they're covering, again, all aspects of the publishing process and impact. So I've just included a few examples of the topics that we have had this month. And as you'll see, we focus quite a lot on open research and open science. We have a lot of different types of training, and even trainings that might not look like they're dealing with open science. It's basically embedded into how we talk about these. So we've had publishing in open access journals, an overview of open research. We tend to talk about open research to be a little bit more inclusive to the arts and humanities and social sciences that don't necessarily have a relationship with the word science all the time. And then we also do peer reviewer training. And we do it in these kind of 60-minute versions, but we also do more in-depth peer reviewer training too, which we can talk to your institutions about doing sessions there. And then we've done a session on sharing sensitive research data, and then one on how to increase the reach of your medical research. So you see they can be very broad topics or very kind of focused topics. And then the next type of training that we have is our research communications lab. And this is really publication-focused, deep dive training on a number of topics. And again, it's about developing that deep understanding of the publishing process and the different elements of the publishing process. So as you can see here with the listed topics we have this fundamentals of publishing, and that's an overview of the publishing process. We have research and publication ethics, managing your data. So that comes back to what Liz was talking about how to share your data, how to in an effective and fair way. We have a course on increasing research impact and then excellence in peer review. So if you go to the next one. What we've done with our training program is really trying to target absolutely every aspect of the research life cycle. So all of the training that we have relates to sometimes multiple parts of the research life cycle. So if you just look at research and publishing ethics, that's going to relate to idea creation, to the planning, to the investigating, obviously to the data collection, the analysis, and the outputs. So each of the courses relates to different parts of the process. I just wanted to quickly go over some of the topics that we're covering in each of the courses. So this fundamentals of publishing, as I said, this is an overview of the publishing process, but it's a deeper dive. There's, obviously publishers oftentimes give talks about how to get published. This really is trying to go one step further and really explore that. So it's looking at how to prepare your manuscript for publication. I mentioned it's about how to write an effective abstract, but also it's about choosing the right platform for publication, because we have found that the #1 reason articles are rejected from journals is because they've been submitted to the wrong journal. So the article in question doesn't fit the aims and scope of the journal in question. So that those tend to be those desk rejects that should come relatively quickly, 1 or 2 weeks. So we really do try and spend a lot of time on that and making those good decisions about where to publish. And then we talk about the submission process and then a very deep dive into peer review and how to navigate the peer review process, how to respond to peer reviewers' comments in a constructive way. The next one. Then we've got research integrity and publishing ethics. As many of you will know, this has become a huge problem within the research ecosystem. We're seeing a rising number of cases, ethics cases that we're dealing with. Every publisher in the world is building up their ethics teams to try and deal with these cases. So what this course is aimed at is looking at some of those key issues that we see and talk about what they are and how to avoid them as a researcher. And then we work with a lot of case studies. So again, so that those that are participating in this program can really understand what they can look like and how to avoid them. It's a great course also for editors. So if you're thinking about doing editing and that sort of thing, this is a really good course for that. You can look at the next one. And then managing your data. This, as I said, really coincides to the work that F1000 is doing. So the course here is talking about what is data and really unpacking what data can look like. And then talking about data management planning, a lot about how to identify the appropriate repository for your data, working with sensitive data, and then how to write data availability statements and thinking about data publishing. And then how to be an effective peer reviewer. This is a light overview of what peer review is and then a little bit about the ethics of peer review. But the main focus of this one is how do you assess an article? And how do you write an effective peer review report? What are the elements of a good peer review report? So this is a real hands-on course again. And then the last one we have is increasing research impact. And this isn't really about impact factors or anything like that. It's really about increasing your real-world impact of your research. And a lot about how do you raise your profile internationally? How do you build those international networks as a researcher? So a lot of the focus is on how to engage with policymakers, how to engage with journalists, how to effectively use social media to share your work and engage with your work, really learning how to translate your work into lay language. You know, how do you write for the general public and this sort of thing. So it's, again, a real hands-on one, trying to work with these different elements. Right, and so the other thing I just wanted to lightly touch on, we do have a lot of services for researchers around that manuscript preparation. So there is language editing services, but we also have scientific editing services, as well as manuscript formatting for those journals that require some kind of formatting. These services can help with that. But then we also have promotional services, and this can be really effective for different types of research. There's infographics, there is research summaries, again for those of you that might struggle with translating your research into lay language. There's a service that can help you do that, how to kind of present your research in a much more dynamic way that will resonate with the general public. And then we do have some video services as well, so video summaries and kind of video overviews of the research. So there's a few different options here. Right, I'm going to just quickly go through these because I'll share these slides with you. So if you go I didn't know that was going to happen, surprise. I just really wanted to start with this one because I wanted to highlight this slide. As said, I'm going to share this with you because if you go to this website, our Author Services website, you're going to find our events page for all of those free webinars that we have, but you'll also find all the information about the editing services and those post-publication services. So you can find all that information there, as well as a lot of guidance about different aspects of the publishing process. Okay, I'm going to keep it short. Are there any questions on what I've covered so far? Just a quick overview. No? Great, I'll hand back to Barry then. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. So some of those, yes. So some of what Victoria and the team do are free, short webinars, but we're very interested in engaging institutions. We're very interested in engaging institutions to offer the in-depth capacity building webinars, which are 3 hours. There is a charge. It's a very reasonable charge, and I don't think there's any limit to the number of students at an institution that can take part in those webinars. So please, if you're interested in that, reach out to Victoria. Thank you. Okay, Tatus, should we have a question and answer session for 10 minutes? Okay, on the stage or just here? Just here. So, are there any further questions or comments from anyone in the audience you'd like to make about anything that we've presented? Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. My name is Arif from University, and I want to know, is there any product for conference proceeding in Thailand and Francis that index in schools or similar product? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we do have a division that looks after conference proceedings. Ardi, do you say a couple of words about that? Okay.
We have CRC Bertempat. So this CRC Bertempat is specialized on conference proceeding. If you want to know the requirement, I can send you the email, and you can in touch directly with the editorial. And of course, for conference proceeding, we always encourage the university to inform us like in advance, like at least 1 year before. It's not like, usually university will contact us like 1 month before the event, and that was not possible because there's some preparation that we need to do.
Thank you so much. Gambaran Sukiono from UC. Would you mind to send your slide presentation to be on to our audience? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. If you've got further questions from reviewing those slides, do let us know. All our contact details are given.
Thank you. I have a question for Liz. Could you explain more about the open review system in your journal? Like how it actually works? Because usually when I get review, it's always like reviewer 1, reviewer 2. Even for a conference, we usually do like blind review. Even the reviewer doesn't know about the author. So how you ensure in your open review system that there is no bias or conflict of interest? Thank you.
Yeah, that's another really good question, and we're constantly looking at that. So, like any other journal, we work with a combination of authors, at the moment, author selection, and we do some in-house, we use algorithms to find peer reviewers as well. So we select reviewers, but we're moving much more to be more predominantly algorithm-based, which is good, yeah, exactly, I know we hear this, and I'm very with you on this. So we select reviewers that, we look at the abstract, we look at the content, we identify reviews like any peer review journal. We also have a conflicts of interest list, so we do, I think we're moving to more AI-based. Have they published with you in the last year? I can't remember what the criteria are, it's not my specialty exactly, I don't work in the peer review team, but we look at whether they've had a link to the author and that kind of thing. We also look for the reviewers themselves to make sure there's diversity in terms of where they're based. We try to get international diversity, but obviously sometimes when there's a huge country like this or India, it's completely fine to have 2 reviewers in India. So, as long as they're not both working in the same institution, that kind of thing. So we do look at that as well. And then we invite them, and then we get into once the review comments come in, we do publish the first reviewer, And the second reviewer who might be being invited in theory can see that review. So, like, I think maybe that's what you're asking. They can actually see, so we publish them in real time. We do that because it's all about getting the research out quickly and being a service to the author. So we don't want to hold up the review until we've got enough reviews to give the author enough to work with. So we do publish them in real time. So we have done some analysis looking at what the second review's like, if the first review's been published. It's really hard to know if there's any bias, it's really hard to see that, but it's all there for everyone to see. But yes, the subsequent reviewers can see reviews that have already been published, so it's all transparent, and I guess there's potential in the system for some bias in that, but we like to think it's all transparent. If the second reviewer comes back and says the same things, or we see that, it's all there to see. So there are some checks and balances, but yes, that's how that works. So they're published in real time. We do check them, but they're published in real time. And again, that's because we're trying to give a service to the authors and not hold up that publishing. So yeah, that's what happens there. And we have thresholds, so it won't be considered past peer review until at least 2 reviewers have said this is okay. So it has to have 2 approved, basically, stated. We have a status on the article. It has to have 2 approveds before the indexers will take it. And that's because obviously bibliographic indexes like Scopus, like PubMed, they have peer review thresholds. They will only index bona fide peer-reviewed content. So your predatory journals will not get in those index databases because they don't have robust peer review processes. But ours is considered robust, and so we are indexed. But we do have that threshold. So if there's only 1 peer review on that article, it will not be in those databases until we have 2 approveds in that database. If a reviewer doesn't like the work and says there's lots of problems with it, it's not rejected per se because it's still there, but those negative comments, or those hopefully constructive comments, will be there. We're trying to turn peer review, the role of peer review, into what it should always be. It's about helping that research be the best it can be. So we're trying to say, even if you get a negative review, there's some scope for the authors to go, okay then, I'll revise this, I'll think about this. And they can respond to those comments and say, I don't agree with you. And they can suggest that we ask in new reviewers as well. So you can have more than 5 reviewers on that article if you want. You can have as many as you like. You can come back and say, I really disagree with that one. And all of you, again, anyone who's published, sometimes you get a reviewer that just doesn't like your work. They're just not, and even if you send a review back, a revision back, they're still not going, I've had this case, so I went to a different journal, right? But you can, that happens, and it still happens with us too. So I don't think we can solve everything, but we're trying to put that checks about it. But again, feedback from authors, feedback from the community about what's working, what's not, like the review I think is just good. That's how we like to work as a publisher. We're about trying to make that work best for the research. So I hope that answers. But yeah, any more questions, just come and ask. I'm going to get Tatas to be the complete expert, so he'll
Any further questions? Yes.
Okay.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. I have one question about the open science data. Previously, you talked about we can reuse the data that we already submitted to the journal or publication, but we need to know what kind of data that we can reuse because we are facing some ethics problem here. For example, like salami slicing or whatsoever. So, how can these Taylor and Francis prevent about those ethics matter? Thank you.
So that's also a fantastic question. I'm not a data expert. I do have colleagues that are data experts. My understanding is that data can be reused across different articles. It's not its own. You can use that data in multiple publications, right? Whether the journals will then publish your papers based on that data, that's a different issue. That's whether that's the salami slicing question that you asked. The data itself can be used in multiple places by multiple people. Indeed, we'd encourage somebody here to use your data that was purpose for that purpose, if it makes sense, right? That's really what we're trying to do with data. It's almost I don't know if you've heard the phrase, it's the new oil, data is the new oil, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but yeah, it's all about underpinning and allowing people to build on your knowledge. If people want to reuse your data, that's completely fine. Data normally have a CC0 license with most open access repositories. So it is about letting other people use your data but attribute it back to you. So you will get your data will be cited and used. Yeah. So well, you know more about the ethics stuff.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick up on the salami slicing because it isn't the data itself. As Liz says, there's data sets that have been used for years and years and years and years. It's how you use it, and it's how you're communicating your findings. So the salami slicing tends to be that when you use that data and you're talking about it or you're engaging with it in a way that is so similar to the article that you've already published that it's not offering anything new. It's just regurgitating old ideas. So that's where people get into trouble. And then in terms of the data, sometimes people get into trouble in how they're talking about the data and how they're talking about the methods, that there will be a lot of overlap in plagiarism, again, replication. So it's just, again, it comes back to how you use it and how you're communicating it.
Please, we have a question from our Melalui University from Ibu Ernanin. So, Ibu Ernanin have her colleague have do submission to F1000. The paper already published and going through peer review process. So the question is that if the paper is not past the peer review process, can they do the revision and do F1000 we recharge them or how?
Yeah, another good question that we get a lot. A very good question. Yeah, at the moment we charge for the whole process. So our aim is to get your work from those beginning checks. We do all the checks on the site, published, and then through peer review. The payment is for all that service. We do keep going with peer review. We will carry on requesting peer review as long as the authors want to keep going. If it doesn't pass peer review, we will still have charged. So that I guess that's the undertaking once you submit it to us. But yeah, we have had a lot of feedback around that actually authors would like to take their work elsewhere if they don't pass peer review. But at the moment, that's the model at the moment. We do charge for the service. I guess we're thinking of ourselves again as a service provider to get the work out there early, do all the checks, and we will keep going with peer review so the authors can come back to us and say, please try some more peer reviewers, and we will keep doing that. But some authors do give up if they don't pass peer review. I haven't got the data on how many don't pass peer review. There is a proportion that don't pass peer review. In a traditional journal system, if you don't pass peer review, you probably end up going somewhere else, and then somewhere else, and then somewhere else. And there's other money and cost involved in that too. So, I mean, that's the challenge. But yeah, we came across someone yesterday who said that they've been trying to publish one article for 6 years. So, yeah.
Not with us.
Not with us. Sorry, not with us.
University Press,
Yeah.
which I can't name, but it's in Cambridge.
Yeah, and we basically, with the same, keep going back and we just felt like saying, I think you probably should give up. Also, that research is probably out of date now. But with us, they would have just at least had it out there. That paper might be problematic, but yeah, that's the model at the moment. You charge for the service. Ideally, we will get it through peer review. Might take some time, but usually wouldn't take.
Do we have any metrics on percentage that maybe get published after a certain number of iterations, for example?
I need to get that. It varies in the different types of science. Most of the medical stuff does get through, and it does get through in times that are very comparable to some of the fast open access journals. I think it's about 70%, but it can take a long time, and it does vary hugely. Some of the less medical content doesn't get through as quickly.
And as an author, you can take the peer review feedback and continue to modify and improve the article. So hopefully, eventually, it will meet all the criteria. So it's a process, it's a journey. And again, as they said, that's the way the service that we're providing. We're helping you on that journey.
subscription journal or an open access journal, and maybe it's not for everybody, but we're putting that out there that it is an option that we're seeing increase in uptake. We're also seeing a lot of other publishers move to open peer review as well. So some of the even optional open peer review, but there are a number of journals now thinking about making open peer review actually just core to what we do.
Including that University Press in Cambridge, which I can't mention.
6 years.
6 years.
Thank you. If you want to follow up, that's
Very good question.
Any other questions? Or any other comments? Tatas, do you have any final comments? Final comments? Or would you say thank you? Okay, well, Terima kasih. Again, we look forward to coming back to Surabaya. We've only got 2 nights. I've been here so many times. There's so much to see in Surabaya, Malang, where we'll be going tomorrow, and beyond East Java. Very good.
Are you fine?
See, we will join tomorrow. And we hope to see Ciputra of the list next year.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tatas. We really appreciate it.
Nyomar aktifnya jam 3.30 Pak ikut.